This week in Idaho, the St. Anthony fire sparks a safety alert, along with other wildfires. A judge blocks the defunding of Planned Parenthood for a moment, and a nuclear power plant could replace the Lava Ridge wind project that failed. Also, Idaho gold exploration gets a green light in a Boise forest. That and so much more. This is the Yocal Idaho Midweek Report, where we give you an overview of the news in Idaho for the last week. Hey, welcome! Happy Firebox! I know you probably thought I was going to say Wednesday, but that's because we are in a Firebox right now with the weather. It is very hot. I went outside, I think it was a couple days ago, to go take care of the chickens, and I swear, I know it probably wasn't the case, but it almost sounded like the air was sizzling. It was that hot. I think we got up to like 109 here in the Treasure Valley. Hopefully you up north haven't been subjugated to that, and for those of us here in the valley have been able to stay cool. Hopefully your AC units are working efficiently, and maybe you've been able to make it up north for us here in the Treasure Valley to some cooler areas. Sadly, I have not been able to yet, keyword being yet. There is still plenty of summer left, even though we're about halfway through it. It's just crazy to me. I swear every year we start in January and February, and I'm like, okay, we've got the year, we're going through it, it's perfectly fine, everything's moving at a normal speed, and then I blink and we're in August, and I'm like, oh my goodness, May happened with graduations and other things, and then that accelerated craziness, and then you have all the weddings that happen each year and stuff. So anywho, we're about halfway through the summer. Hopefully you have been able to get most of your things in, and if not, there's still a little bit of summer left. I know it's crazy to say when we're hitting our high temperatures, but it seems like summer things seem to wrap up as we head into September, and then really we're getting back into cold weather by the end of October. But staying with the theme of weather and for stories this week, first half we have news on the wildfires burning across Idaho. And then, obviously, as we hinted at earlier, a judge blocks the defunding of Planned Parenthood, and nuclear looks to take over the failed lava wind project. And then for the middle, we'll have some news on Buc-ee's coming to Idaho. If you don't know what that is, you're in for a little bit of a treat. I haven't actually experienced it, but I do know from social media roughly what it is. The Boise Schools District is struggling with a new law that they don't quite agree with. And a quadruple murder happens in eastern Idaho. Just when we get the Moscow one solved, now we've got another one. And then to close out, we have some news about the Trump admin finally blocking Chinese from owning American farmland. Idaho Power warns of scams, and the Eagle Rodeo seems to have found a home. So please stay with us until the end for those stories and others. It will be very good, trust me. But starting with that first story, fire crews battled several significant blazes across our state this past week, with the grassy fire near St. Anthony capturing most of the attention. It burned about 2,018 acres north of St. Anthony sand dunes after starting Friday afternoon. What initially appeared to be over 4,000 acres was later mapped more accurately by the Eastern Idaho Interagency Fire Team. The South Fairmont Fire District Chief Chris Hill reported that crews mostly contained the fire after Friday evening's intensive efforts, though rising temperatures and dropping humidity could reignite the spread. Officials believe welding work was the cause of it, particularly on a fence, though they're still investigating on that. Another fire that got little less attention this last week was the Garden Creek fire near Blackfoot, also demanded resources, burning about 5,418 acres in the Fort Hall Reservation before crews contained it. This fire prompted evacuations and required multiple agencies to respond. And then meanwhile, the Old Grief fire in Lewis County burned about 78 acres, so much smaller, before reaching 100% containment. Lightning caused this blaze, which threatened structures, but crews from multiple agencies successfully protected them. Fire officials raised the national preparedness level to level 4 this weekend, indicating peak fire season conditions. Pretty typical for us as we get into the end of July, 1st of August. Federal forecasters predict above normal fire potential through September across our region. With these dangerous conditions persisting and burn bans approaching, Chief Hill's warnings ring clear. Quote, "Be careful. It's getting dry out there, and the burn bans are coming." End quote. These fires remind us why we must stay vigilant during these very critical months of the fire season. And coming to our headline story. Last Monday, Planned Parenthood rushed to federal court after President Trump signed legislation that would block their Medicaid funding for a year. Within hours, Obama-appointed Judge Indira Tawani issued a temporary restraining order that halts the defunding provision. This legal maneuver comes just weeks after the Supreme Court ruled that states can cut off Medicaid funds to Planned Parenthood. The Supreme Court's 6-3 decision affirms South Carolina's right to exclude abortion providers from its Medicaid program, something we've talked about in our past midweek reports. Yet this Massachusetts judge has now stepped in to block similar federal action. If it works at the state level, it should work at the federal level. Not a bad guessing there. Anywho, as for why this matters, Planned Parenthood received over $792 million in taxpayer funding last year, including Medicaid reimbursements. While federal law already prohibits direct funding of abortions, money is fungible if you know anything about your finances. Every dollar Planned Parenthood doesn't spend on other services frees up money they can redirect toward their core business, performing abortions. The numbers tell the story. Planned Parenthood performed over 400,000 abortions last year. They claimed this funding cut would force clinic closures. But pro-life advocates argue taxpayers shouldn't subsidize an organization that ends over 1,100 lives daily. Attorney General Pam Bondi has promised the Justice Department will challenge this restraining order. Susan B. Anthony, Pro-Life America, criticized Planned Parenthood's desperation in running to court to protect their taxpayer funding. The temporary order lasts about 2 weeks, setting up a crucial legal battle over whether federal courts can override legislative efforts to defund the nation's largest abortion provider. And speaking about a federal initiative that got stopped, but might have a good ending here, a local company wants to bring nuclear power to Jerome County. Sawtooth Energy Development Corporation plans to build 6 small modular reactors that could power 400,000 homes. CEO Roy Prescott, who lives in Jerome, chose the same area where the controversial Lava Wind project stalled. The nuclear plant would sit on just 40 acres compared to Lava Ridge's massive 200,000-acre footprint. Dan Adamson from the Sawtooth says each reactor produces about 77 megawatts of power. Together, the 6 units would generate about 462 megawatts, especially if you did your math ahead of me there. That's nearly half the power Lava Ridge promised, but on a teeny fraction of the land. As for some context on this, and something I didn't know, the Magic Valley attracts energy companies because of its existing power lines at the Midpoint substation. From there, electricity flows to Oregon, Wyoming, Nevada, and California. So if you want a cheap way to tie in and then add power to the grid and get money from it, it's a good spot to do it. Sawtooth hopes to fast-track permits by using environmental studies already done for the Lava Ridge project. President Trump's policies could cut approval time from 5 years to 2 due to the cutting of red tape for domestic production. The company will hold public meetings starting this Monday at Jerome County Courthouse. Residents can also attend a session on July 30th in Shoshone. These smaller reactors offer a cleaner, more efficient way to meet our growing energy needs, while using far less land than a wind or solar projects. And speaking of domestic production, Resolution Minerals from Australia just got the green light to start exploring right next to the Perpetua Resources Stibnite project in central Idaho. The Boise National Forest approved their plan to drill for gold, antium, and tungsten at the Horse Heaven project near Yellow Pine. If you need to look up all those words, feel free. I just ran out of space to fit it all in here. But as for why this matters, it's mainly because China cut off antium exports to us last December, something we've been talking about for a couple episodes. We don't mine antium here at home, even though our military needs it for ammunition and weapons. The same goes for tungsten. We rely completely on imports. This resolution will drill on Gold Gate Hill and collect soil samples from Antium Ridge. They can work around the clock for a year once they start. The company paid about $650,000 plus stock to buy 699 mining claims that cover 22 square miles. As for why, China produces nearly half of the world's antium, So when they banned exports, prices shot up. Now we're scrambling to find these critical minerals here at home. Resolution thinks the project could be a game changer, since it sits right next to what will likely become America's biggest antium producer at stibnite. In conclusion, the feds want to fast-track permits, and might offer defense grants just like they did for Perpetua. Which, if you like the news about American production and the Lava Wind project being closed, hit the like button down below and subscribe/follow with us on YouTube, Rumble, or Twitter so you can stay connected with us and all the wonderful news that's going on in Idaho. And then going from minerals to gasoline, Texas-based travel center chain Buc-ee's wants to build their first Idaho location right here in Meridian, just off I-84 at Meridian Road. This isn't just your typical gas station. We're talking about a massive 74 square foot one with 104 fuel pumps. Take that, Costco. That could rival the world's largest convenience stores. The city records show that Buc-ee's has met with local officials in June to discuss buying 30 acres at the Meridian Road interchange. The company plans to invest over $50 million and hire between 175 to 225 employees just for a gas station, hopefully creating $9 million in annual payroll for Meridian. What makes Buc-ee special? They're famous for their spotless bathrooms, fresh barbecue brisket, and dozens of beef jerky varieties and addictive beaver nuggets, something that I see online people are a bit crazy about. I'll have to try them when they get here. Plus, they'll be paying well above market rates if you're looking for a job. Cashiers start at about $18 per hour. In conclusion, the traffic study predicts about 19,000 daily trips, though most would be drivers who already travel to I-84. While Buc-ee's declined to comment officially, the project could transform the busy interchange into a major destination for families in the valley or those driving between Boise and Salt Lake. And speaking of the Treasure Valley and heading over to Boise, our state lawmakers passed House Bill 41 to protect students from political messages in schools. The law took effect on July 1st and clearly states that schools cannot display flags or banners that promote political, religious, or ideological viewpoints. Kind of a very broad law. But the Boise School District seems to be struggling to comply. They announced they'll continue supporting teachers who display "Everyone is welcome here" signs, which my editor can put up above. You'll see it's a little bit more of a progressive sign. Despite the new law, the district claims these signs aren't ideological, but rather their legal duty. This lack of compliance does create some concerning precedent. When West Ada faced a similar controversy earlier this year, which we talked about, teacher Sarah Imnah resigned after being asked to remove her "Everyone is welcome here" poster. Students even walked out in protest. The Boise district's memo to families attempted to justify their stance, arguing that they're creating a welcoming environment. However, parents deserve the right to decide what messages their children encounter at school. House Bill 41 exists precisely to try to prevent schools from pushing particular viewpoints on students. This standoff between the district and state law raises important questions about who actually controls what's happening in our classrooms. Parents at the end of the day elected these lawmakers to pass this law, yet the district seems determined to find ways around it. And speaking of Boise again, after years of legal battles, Boise Planning and Zoning Commission has finally approved the Interfaith Sanctuary's permit for their new State Street shelter. This unanimous vote Monday night came after 9 hours of public testimony. This marks the second time the organization has sought approval for the same project. Back in 2022, the Planning and Zoning Commission first denied the permit, but the City Council overturned that decision. However, the Idaho Supreme Court later ruled that the city have overstepped its authority in the appeals process. Executive Director Jody Peterson-Stingers says her team felt more confident this time around because they better understood what planners needed from them, particularly regarding security plans. With the permit now in hand, Interfaith can resume interior construction, including guest dormitories that were put on hold after the Supreme Court ruling. The organization, though, still needs roughly about $5 million to complete the project, but plans to host a ribbon-cutting ceremony in October. And then going from one end of the valley to the other, to Caldwell, its mayor last week, Jerome Wagner, delivered his third State of our city, kind of a play on the State of the City address, at the Caldwell High School, painting a picture of rapid growth and reduced taxes. Wagner claims Caldwell has Idaho's fastest growing population, with commercial and industrial growth outpacing residential development. He says this has brought about 6,000 new jobs and helped cut average property taxes from $1,300 to $827 over 4 years, a 40% drop. But like most things, context is important. Statewide legislative changes largely drive these tax reductions, not just local policies at the city level. While Wagner does deserve credit for managing growth, we shouldn't ignore broader state trends affecting our tax bills. However, the mayor did highlight genuine local wins. Violent crime decreased despite population growth, and our fire department here attracted top talent nationwide. He also recognized remarkable citizens like the James Beard Award winner Salvador Alamilla, and the heroic lifeguards who saved children at the city pool. Wagner's emphasis on, quote, partnership, relationship, and leadership, end quote, reflects some solid community values. However, the people of Caldwell, as the stewards of the city's future, should celebrate achievements while asking hard questions about sustainability and ensuring growth serves all residents, not just developers. Did you know about Planned Parenthood, or the different things going on with the nuclear project, or that there was even a State of the City speech done in Caldwell? If not, please don't hesitate to share this episode with your friends and family so they can know what's going on in the state of Idaho and be engaged. And speaking of shocking things, a crime has shaken our southeastern counties over this last week. Benjamin Roy Naylor, a 56-year-old burly man, now faces 4 counts of first-degree murder, after authorities say he killed 4 people across Cassia and Minidoka County on July 8th. The case began when someone called 911 after finding a woman dead in her Rupert home on F Street. Within hours, officers discovered 2 more victims in Cassia County and a 4th person dead inside a vehicle in Minidoka County. Law enforcement agencies worked together swiftly. The Lincoln County Sheriff's Office arrested Naylor during a traffic stop with help from Idaho State Police. Officers believe he acted alone, so there's no ongoing threat to others. Moving forward, Naylor appeared in court Wednesday and remains in custody without bond. He'll face preliminary hearings on July 18th in Cassia County and July 23rd in Minidoka County. While authorities haven't released all the victims' names, we know this tragedy has torn families apart. A GoFundMe has been set up for Kelly and Dawn Jenks, described as loving grandparents who are the light of their new granddaughter's life. This reminds us that evil exists, if you had any doubts, but so does the dedication of those who serve and protect our local communities. And speaking of the intersection of international and local, the Trump administration just announced a major push to ban Chinese ownership of American farmland, and our state has been way ahead of the curve on this issue. Agricultural Secretary Brooke Rollins unveiled the National Farmer Security Action Plan last week, calling farmers' security a matter of national security. As for what exactly is happening here, the Fed will block foreign adversaries from buying our agricultural land, and even try to claw back property that Chinese-backed entities already own. Idaho's Governor Brad Little has joined 8 other Republican governors in backing this plan, recognizing what we've known for years. We can't let foreign powers control our food supply. To put these numbers in perspective, Chinese investors currently hold about 276,000 acres nationwide. While that might sound like a lot, it's technically only 0.02% of all foreign-owned agricultural land. But the principle does matter. As Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders said at the announcement, quote, "A country has to be able to feed itself, feel itself, and fight for itself to truly be free," end quote. We've been fighting this battle at the state level, though, and now Washington is finally catching up. This is about protecting our agricultural heritage and ensuring our families can keep farming the land that their forefathers worked. And speaking of defending ourselves, and in a good way, last week we welcomed home more than 300 brave airmen from our 124th Fighter Wing who served overseas for nearly 4 months. These men and women left Gowan Field in March and deployed to the U.S. Central Command area, which covers the Middle East and Southwest Asia. Our airmen flew the A-10 Thunderbolt aircraft, those iconic warthogs we're so proud of here in Idaho. They supported combat operations alongside pilots from the 190th Fighter Squadron, maintenance crews, and other support personnel. Colonel Ryan Richardson, the wing commander, praised their work, saying their skill and dedication adds to the wing's long history of service. However, this wasn't their first rodeo. The 124th has deployed many times before, including major missions in 2020 and 2016. Though this homecoming is bittersweet, is that the A-10s won't be around much longer. The Air Force is retiring the Warthog fleet, and Idaho's first A-10 already left for the Boneyard in May. The 124th will transition to F-16s by 2027. We owe these airmen and their families our gratitude for their sacrifice and service to our nation. And speaking of flying for the rest of us, we've got some great news for anyone that goes to the Boise airport or travels anywhere in the country. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem announced last week the TSA will no longer require travelers to remove their shoes at checkpoints. This ends a policy that has frustrated flyers for nearly 20 years, ever since the shoe bomber incident back in 2001. Something that's a little bit before my time, but it's good to know about it. The change took effect immediately across all airports nationwide. The TSA says they now have better technology and multiple layers of security that make shoe removal unnecessary. However, though, some passengers might still need to take off their shoes if agents think extra screening is needed, so more on a case-by-case basis rather than standard. This is huge for regular travelers who don't want to pay for the TSA pre-check just to keep their shoes on. The only people who could skip the step before were pre-check members who paid around $80 for 5 years. Secretary Noem says this change will speed up security lines and improve the travel experience for everyone. Finally, some common sense at airport security. Hey there, I know we're very excited about not having to take our shoes off when we go through TSA, but you've made it to this point in the Midweek Report about stuff about Idaho. Maybe consider subscribing or following us so you don't miss any of our future content and you can be the most informed Idahoan in the room. And one last story in Boise. Last Tuesday, the Boise City Council unanimously voted to change a noise ordinance that had effectively banned megaphones at protests downtown. This reverses a policy that protesters argued violated their First Amendment rights. The Sierra Club, in all their wonder, filed a federal lawsuit against the city in April of 2024, claiming police used the old ordinance to target and arrest demonstrators who used amplified sound devices. Under the previous rule, officers could ticket anyone whose megaphone was audible from 100 feet away or could be heard in nearby homes. The council's vote settles the lawsuit and allows protesters to use megaphones freely without permits. The city will also pay the Sierra Club $80,000 as part of this agreement. Lisa Young from the Idaho Sierra Club celebrated the decision, calling it, quote, a win for free speech and a win for all Boiseans who want to practice their constitutionally protected rights, end quote. This change is aimed at helping Idahoans exercise their constitutional rights to peacefully assemble and free speech. And then going from Boise out to our reservoirs, something that affects all of us, after spring optimism about our water supply, reality has sadly hit. The Idaho Department of Water Resources just signed an order that predicts that the Twin Falls Canal Company will face a shortfall of 75,300 acre-feet of water this irrigation season. As you may remember from a couple months ago, looking back in April, things looked pretty good. We had a solid snowpack and cool weather, but 3 months of exceptionally dry conditions and severe heat can change a lot. Now most of our state faces drought conditions, including northern Idaho, which marks 3 straight years of drought. But there is some good news for water users. Last summer's hard work did pay off. Farmers negotiated through the growing season to create the 2024 Water Settlement Agreement. This means that most water users won't face curtailment. Having their water shut off is what that means, even with the shortage. But there is a little bit of a deadline with it. Water users have until July 25th to prove they participate in the approved plan, like the 2024 settlement, to avoid curtailment. Junior water right holders who aren't part of the plan should join one quickly. This shortage highlights how vital water remains to our farmers and locals. It's almost like it's needed for life. Anywho, I don't know, just a suggestion there. The summit shows what we can achieve when we work together during tough times. And speaking of the company that owns all the dams, Idaho Power is warning Idahoans about a surge in scammers who are knocking on doors and calling homes, and they're literally coming all the way to you, to pretend to work for the company. The fraudsters demand immediate payment and threaten to shut off power if you don't pay right away using prepaid cards or cryptocurrency. That might have been your first telltale sign. Now, here's what you need to know on this. Idaho Power will never demand payments over the phone. They don't ask for green dot cards, Bitcoin, or QR code payments. They won't charge you for defective meters or demand same-day payment through gift cards. Kind of anytime anyone wants to be paid by gift cards is a little dangerous. If someone claims to represent Idaho Power, as we just got at the red flags, they'll want payment immediately. They'll ask for prepaid cards or cryptocurrencies, and they'll pressure you to act fast. Real Idaho Power employees arrive in company vehicles, wearing company-issued clothing, and carry ID badges if you want to make sure to verify. But in any case, before you hand over any money, you can call Idaho Power directly at 208-388-2323 to verify if they actually sent someone to your home. You can also check your account online or through their mobile app. Don't let scammers prey on our neighbors. When something feels wrong, trust your instincts and verify before you pay. And coming to our last story, the Eagle Rodeo has finally found what organizers hope will be its permanent home after moving 3 times in recent years. The beloved event now sits at the Chaparral Road in Eagle's foothills, where it just wrapped up another successful year. Director Michael Gallegos says the rodeo has traveled quite a bit, from State Tree to Avermore, then along Highway 16, and now to what many call the most scenic location yet. Quote, "The views are phenomenal, and we've got tons of compliments on this year's rodeo," Gallego noted. What makes this move different is the security of a 5-year agreement. This means organizers can finally focus on building permanent structures instead of constantly packing up and moving. They're planning for better seating, permanent lighting, restrooms, and improved parking. Over about 5,000 people attended this year's event, helping the rodeo break even despite the costly move. The event still managed to support local charities through their traditional boot passing fundraiser. With their 25th anniversary coming up next year in 2026, the Eagle Rodeo seems ready to put down roots and serve the Treasure Valley for years to come. And speaking of serving the Treasure Valley, thank you for listening to the entire report. Hopefully, we were able to serve you, and you found the midweek report enjoyable and valuable. If you liked it, make sure to check out our other content on Substack. We're constantly improving there. Also, if we missed any important points or provided incorrect information, please feel free to reach out to us via email or on Twitter by tweeting us at @LocalYocal_Idaho. With the small team we have, we're not able to cover everything, but we do our best to cover the most interesting and important stories. Thank you for your continued assistance and support. That's all for now, and I wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Godspeed.